Muy buenas tardes a todos. Hello. We are so delighted that you have joined us today in this special live series event, Social Media Strategies for Hispanic Small Businesses, part of our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. Feliz mes de la herencia hispana a todos. I am Mirna Eusebio Lithgow, a proud Latina, Senior Vice President of Product Development and Marketing at Altice USA, the parent company for Optimum and Suddenlink Business. At Optimum and Suddenlink Business, we are more than just your internet provider. We offer an advanced voice, mobile solutions, internet security, and entertainment services for more than 400,000 businesses across 21 states in the US. Este espacio es para ustedes. Our Small Talks virtual series is designed to provide educational and informative topics of interest and benefit to our small business customers throughout our entire footprint. Today, in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, we will focus on Hispanic-owned small businesses, which over the last 15 years have grown more than 2 times the rate of non-Hispanic-owned businesses in the US. We will share key strategies and tips to maximize the use of social media to help grow your small business. To help us do that, here we are with our friends from VML Y&R, one of the world's leading full-service advertising and marketing agencies, with over 189 offices in 93 countries. Today, we welcome Vicky Principe, Senior Social Connections Manager at VML Y&R Miami. Vicky, who was born in Caracas, Venezuela, and has been a resident of Miami for the past 19 years, has led social media strategies for major companies in hospitality, aviation, telecommunications, entertainment, and travel. As a Latina and as a business partner to her husband, Vicky understands what it means to grow a small business firsthand. She's super excited to share her expertise with all of you, as well as her personal experience with her family's business. We are thrilled to have her here with us today. One last note, the Q&A feature in our webinar is live. So if you have questions, please type it in the dialog box and we will try to answer as many as we can after the presentation. And now, here's Vicky. Hola, Vicky, bienvenida.
Hola, hola a todos. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be with you all this afternoon, and thank you for such a lovely introduction. I've been extremely lucky to have had the chance of working with incredible brands in both the US Hispanic and the Latin American markets. And having the opportunity to work with such incredible brands like Netflix Latin America and Marriott in the Caribbean has really helped me get to know our community in a much deeper level. And on a more personal level, having the opportunity to work with my in-laws and my husband as they continue to grow their small business has been really, really humbling. And as you all know, starting to grow your small business is hard. It might seem like an intimidating process, and it's definitely a journey, that's sometimes overwhelming. So I'm so excited to be with you all this morning and to share with you some tips and tricks on how to continue to grow and digitalize your business. And we can get started. Alrighty, let's go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Perfect. So before we kickstart our workshop, I wanted to share this great fun fact and insight with all of you. And it's so important for us to understand our worth as a Hispanic community and what our businesses mean to the economy. Businesses with a majority of Hispanic ownership are estimated to employ 2.7 million Americans and contribute over $700 million to the economy annually. So let this serve as an inspiration and a reminder of how important we are and the incredible impact that we can bring to the table. Let's go to the next slide. So what you learned today, we're going to talk about so many things in a very little amount of time, okay? But we're going to talk, and you're going to learn a lot about how to build your brand story from defining your voice and capturing your consumers' attention. We're going to talk about how to reach your audience, the difference between organic and paid social, and how to understand your audience's online behavior. And we're going to talk about how to measure your brand success and the impact of your social media strategy. We can go to the next slide. So we're going to cover some great stuff for the next hour. We're going to talk about what it means to be a brand, the importance of the culture you must build from the inside out, your business objectives, the channels to consider once you move your business online, creative inspiration, and last but not least, results and how to track your success. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what is a brand? And I'm sure a lot of you have asked yourselves this question several times. I know I have, especially when you're starting to work on your own business, right? And as I worked on social media strategies with my clients and my colleagues and now my family, this conversation is so important when you start building your business. What is a brand? So a brand is a vision and driving force behind everything that an organization does. It's why the company was started. It's why employees get up in the morning and why their customers should care. But let's dive into this a little bit more. Let's go to the next slide, please. I know when I was starting to work with my family with their own small business, and as I've worked with my clients, when we talk about being a brand, we talk about your values, right? When you think about yourself as a human being, you think about the values with which you guide your life, right? You think about that backbone, those core values that you stay true to on a daily basis. So it's very similar to when you think about your own brand. When you think about the vision and driving force, you think about how your brand must reflect your core values. When you think about, why the company was started, you think about your brand and how your brand should reflect the reason why you're doing the business that you're doing. When you think about why employees get up in the morning, you want your employees to be your biggest advocates. You want your employees to be your biggest fans. So when you start working on your brand, you need to really think about, how do I make my employees feel heard, understood, respected, seen? This is just as important as what your customers are going to think about your brand, right? Why you want your customers to care. You want to cater content to your customers that's going to be relatable to who they are, and that's going to be relevant to the times that we live in, and that's also going to be groundbreaking, right? So this is basically what encompasses a brand. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about culture, because it really goes hand in hand when you think about building your brand. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so a brand doesn't really have much of a backbone if it doesn't understand and believe in its culture, right? When we think about our own culture as Latinos, as a Hispanic community, we feel pride and we want to celebrate that, right? When we start building our own businesses, we want our businesses to somehow, whether it's subtle or a bit more straightforward, to reflect our values, but also to celebrate our culture, right? So during that process, as you start to build your brand, it's important to really look at what bigger brands are doing and to let that serve as an inspiration. Obviously, keeping it very realistic in a sense that, maybe what bigger brands are doing is not really realistic for a small business to follow, but at the same time, it serves as a guide of, okay, this is what we should be doing or strive to do for our business internally and externally. right? And we know that COVID-19 has impacted all of us in some shape or form, and it has undoubtedly changed the course of how businesses behave internally and externally. So let's look at these four specific actions that your business must always keep in mind to drive interest and brand equity. For example, operational changes are a constant while the world keeps moving. Your business must always be prepared to answer to the demands of your consumer, and your employee advocacy is just as important as your consumer advocacy. So when we look at what bigger brands are doing, especially during these times, we look at what LVMH has been doing, making hand sanitizers for hospitals. We look in regards to supply chain. Amazon started to hire more employees to keep up with the demand. When you look about employee advocacy, you look at how Visa has committed to no layoffs in 2020. And when you look at consumer advocacy, for example, you look at how United Airlines and Delta Airlines started to offer full refunds to people who had to cancel their flights during these crazy circumstances. So it's important to look at what these brands are doing from that perspective and to keep this in mind. Your consumer's perception will mostly derive from your brand and your culture more than your product. And this is definitely a controversial conversation, right? When you're starting to build your business, you really want to think about how you're monetizing your business, you want to think about your product. But when you start building your business, it's important to really understand that sometimes your values and the way that you behave internally with your employees and what you're doing to help your community and to make your community feel understood and supported sometimes is worth even more than your product. So, this is something that I really, really want you guys to understand and to take with you. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, for example, during these crazy circumstances, we've not only seen what big brands are doing, like we just saw, right, in regards to making their employees feel supported and their customers feel understood and supported as well. But it's also good to keep it real, to stay realistic to what you as a small business owner can do, right? It's sometimes in the little things where your effort means so much more. So, for example, when you look about what small businesses are doing to celebrate their values and to support their communities, you look at what bars are doing. This specific bar did that offered a free happy hour for those working in the front lines, right? And that was their way of thanking those risking their lives to save ours. When you think about, how to make your consumer feel safe during these crazy times, you look at what a lot of small businesses are doing. They're offering masks or hand sanitizers. I've seen that personally in Miami. A lot of the places, small businesses that I go to, they either receive you with a box of masks. If you're not able to have a mask, they provide you with one. Every small business provides you with a little kit or a little hand sanitizer that you can use. So it's important to look at also, what small businesses are doing. Not only to stay true to their values, but to also be a leader in their community. You look at how small businesses in Brooklyn partnered up not only to support COVID relief, but to support each other, right? So sometimes thinking about the big picture and how to support each other as a small business will make a bigger impact. We can go to the next slide. So, a focus on brand will help you find your authentic voice. Always remember, stay consistent with your brand voice and stay true to your values, now more than ever. Internal communication is just as important as your external communication. Always let your employees and your customers know what you're doing for them and why you're doing it. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It will always lead you to know your community on a more personal level. But also, don't be afraid to listen. It's important to know what your audience thinks about your brand, about your competitors, and everything that's happening around them. This will help you remain relevant. And last but not least, recognize what works and what doesn't work for your business. Take note of your consumers' reactions and learn from that. And even though this might seem overwhelming and intimidating, it's a trial and error process. It's a journey where we're going to make mistakes. It's a journey where we're going to learn so much, not only from ourselves, but from our consumer, from our peers, from the industry, and from everything that's happening. These are changing times, and it's definitely okay to stay humble, see it as just a learning process, and to be easy on ourselves. We can move on to the next slide. Alrighty, so now as we move into our business portion of the workshop, and we can go to the next slide, we must remember that your brand is an extension of your business. Can we go to the next slide, please? Alrighty, and that as you move your business online, you must understand how your community behaves in the digital space, what channels are interacting with the most, and how social media can help you achieve your different business goals. So let's look at these fun facts about our own Hispanic community in the US and their digital behavior. US Hispanics spend nearly 66% more time per week watching videos on their smartphones compared to the total market. I know my family is definitely a part of this percentage. 77% of Hispanics are engaged or registered in social media networks. 30% of Hispanics in the US are more likely to buy a product advertised on a social media site. That's me. 65% of US Hispanics research an item on their smartphones. But now let's look at these broader statistics also that are important to keep in mind. Let's go to the next slide really quick. So 64% of consumers make a purchase after viewing a branded social video. And consistent brand presentation across all creative outlets increases revenue by up to 33%. Now, these are a lot of numbers, but what I want you to take away from this is that our presence is undoubtable, right? We are in the social space in big amounts of numbers. So this behavior is extremely important to keep in mind as you move your business online and understand really the immensity of our presence in this space. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we know that these times have heightened the importance of having a strong online presence, but as we continue to monitor our consumers' behavior, because it's changing on a daily basis, let's go to the basic steps on how to make this change happen. So for example, number one, developing your website. It's okay to take your time. It sounds super intimidating. I know the minute that I've discussed this with my in-laws, it was like, what? How do we do that? It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to talk to the experts. You know, we can't really expect ourselves to know everything. So it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to do the homework, do some research, but it's definitely important to keep developing your website as a very important step into this process of moving your business online. This will help your company increase product knowledge. It will help visibility. It will maintain your relationships with your customers. It will generate leads, increase brand awareness. So it's one of the most important steps that you should keep in mind. But don't let it intimidate you. I know it might sound intimidating, and these tech steps might be just too overwhelming. So feel free to ask for help, talk to the experts, ask questions, and get it done. For number two, collect and upload all of your data in a cloud. Now, this might not seem as important, but it definitely is, especially during these digital times where you might lose a document and never find it again. So I always suggest keep all of your data and your content in the cloud. Just if anything happens with your computer or anything, you have all of your information, your data, your content, everything in a safe space. Creating a consistent online presence. Now, for me particularly, this is the most important step because it talks about building your online persona in the social space. And you also have to understand that not all of your consumers are going to connect with you through the same platforms, right? So it's important to build a consistent online presence across the board and stay true to your tone, straight to your persona, to your message, to your values, but really create that visibility in the space. And last but not least, set up Google Analytics. Now, this will allow you to track your success and further understand the behaviors of your audience, which is essential for you to continue to improve your digital strategy. We can move to the next slide. All right. So different channels for different objectives. Again, there are so many social media channels that might seem so overwhelming. And a lot of the questions that I get as a social media strategist is, do I have to use all of these channels? Does it make sense for me to be present and have an online presence on all of these channels and platforms and all of these different formats? The answer is no. Don't let this overwhelm you. It has to make sense with your business and the brand that you're trying to build, right? And that's why each platform caters something differently to the consumer and to the follower, right? Some are more creative than others. Some of them are a bit more strategic. So let's briefly go over each of them. For example, Twitter. Now, Twitter is the space where I want people to retweet whatever I'm talking about, right? I want to connect with those who like tacos just as much as I do. And that's why I have an opportunity to say, hey guys, retweet this if you like this taco. And that's going to open a conversation between me and my followers or people in the space where we can have a one-on-one conversation. And I love this about this platform. Is one of those platforms where you really feel like you connect not only to your followers, but people who you might not even know, and where you can also connect to other brands. And as you continue to grow your business and build your brand, once that is established, you can identify those other brands that are a part of your same industry and your same community, where you can have those conversations and talk to their fans as well and grow your online community, right? But apart from that, Twitter is also a place where you can find breaking news. It's very relevant, especially now during these times. A lot of people are going on Twitter to look at the news and read what's happening, where it's happening. So it's about real-time breaking news, real-time conversations. It's also great for customer service. A lot of brands use Twitter only for customer service, where they directly respond to complaints or questions about their product. So there's different aspects of how you can use this platform for your business benefit. Now, for example, when we go to Facebook, that's where you want to have those long discussions with your family members, where you share those industry news and articles. You can start sharing a bit more of a longer format content. You can have Facebook Lives that are instructive and educational. So it's important. You can also host events, right, where you can invite people to your event for your business. You can also connect on a more local level to any Facebook groups that are part of your community. So it's definitely an important platform to keep in mind. One of the most important, I would suggest. Now, when we move into Instagram, now this is where you can let your creativity fly, right? This is where there are really no boundaries in terms of creativity, where you can spend hours just browsing through your feed. And I know I'm not the only one that sometimes I go on Instagram and I tell myself, I'm going to do this for just 15 minutes. And then it's been 2 hours and I'm still on the same feed. But what's beautiful about that is that as I'm on the feed, I find inspiration. And for example, I see what other brands are doing. As I was helping my in-laws with their small business, I would see inspiration from what other people were doing that was relevant to our business, right? And I would save those in a folder. Or I'm planning for my wedding, so I would start saving photos of dresses and decorations. So it's a space where you feel a bit more free in terms of the creativity, and it's not a place where you feel so overwhelmed with information. But at the same time, it's so beneficial for your business because people also go to Instagram to purchase, right? So it's a perfect mixture of all of the social media platforms. Now, when we go into YouTube, this is where you share those amazing tutorials with your audience. And this is also the perfect platform to produce long format content. So I tend to recommend YouTube to people who are building a business that's, has a very specific product, whether it's makeup, for example. YouTube is perfect for that. If you're working on your own makeup brand, then there's such an incredible, first of all, there's an incredible community, right, of people who love makeup tutorials on YouTube. So there's a space there where you can start producing beautiful makeup tutorials and how to videos that are going to cater specifically to a community that's already present in the space. So like I mentioned before, as long as it makes sense with your own business, it's very important for you to consider. When we look at Reddit, now Reddit is a controversial platform, but I really like talking about it because it's the ultimate discussion board. I have found so many trending opportunities just by going on Reddit and reading about what's trending that day. So it's sort of a Twitter, but more focused on the social media community. And even if you don't plan on using it for your business, I would suggest to use it just to keep up with what's happening in the social environment. And last but not least, LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a popular for B2B businesses. And nowadays it's really, really growing as a social media platform as well. So it's a great place for you to network with other companies within your same industry, or for you to share company news or keep up with what's happening with your competitor. It's also a great space that we know of, recruiting new employees and connecting with new people. So this is our recommendation to really keep LinkedIn in mind, and also, keep it close because it's really, really growing and ever changing on a day-to-day basis. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, I lost it there. So with all of this in mind, and I know that it's a lot of information, but with all of this information that I just shared, if this is used correctly, social media can help you achieve all of your business goals, whichever they may be. So as you start to build your digital strategy, make sure that you establish your business objectives from the beginning, understand each platform and its rationale, why it makes sense for you and your business. List your key performance indicators so that you're always tracking your work. And in these challenging times, it's okay to test new things. It's a learning process, and always remember that you're not in this alone. And I also understand that as times change, so do these platforms. So just take it easy, continue to do some research, keep up with the changes that are happening in the social space, but stay true to your objectives. And by staying true to your objectives and applying those to the platforms that make sense to you, you're going to be successful. Let's move to the next slide. So now that we've really talked about, all of these platforms and what they mean and how to use them and the rationale and the importance of moving your business online and what that looks like, let's really look at what that looks like. I think it's also important, especially now, to look at things from a more human perspective, because when you start working on your business, and I've seen it firsthand, it might get overwhelming because you feel like you're in this alone. You feel like you're doing this by yourself, and there are so many questions and am I going to succeed? How am I going to make this happen? Everything's changing, and it might just feel like a long road with no visible end. So I think it's important for us to look at these stories and let them serve as inspirations, because these are people that are just like us, working on their small businesses and adjusting to the times. When you look at Rosana and Ricardo, for example, the restaurant owners, like so many, had to close their restaurant because of the pandemic, and they shifted their menu to orders that they could serve and deliver from a ghost kitchen. And I've heard so many small businesses that have shifted to doing this. When you look at Natalie, for example, a gym owner, her gym closed, and then she started recruiting her people to follow her gym classes in Zoom, right? And so I've been doing Zoom gym classes for the past 8 months, and so many people have had to adjust to these changes. And on a personal level, for example, being a Miami resident and being Venezuelan American, I'm a big supporter of small businesses in my community. And when the pandemic started, I remember, we had to order a lot of food, but we were concerned because not everybody felt safe ordering food via Uber Eats or Postmates, right? And it was that battle of, I don't know if I should order food from, from a restaurant. Is that safe? But you also, want to support small businesses. You want to support your community. And this friend of mine owned a catering company, and they used their catering company just for events and weddings, very high level. They didn't even have a social media presence, right? They worked off of a ghost kitchen, but they worked for big events. And during the pandemic, they created an Instagram account, very simple, super, super basic. They used their personal following through their personal accounts. They brought their friends to their new business account, and they started to let everybody else know, hey guys, we're bringing our catering business, selling their products through their social media platforms. And it was a lifesaver. So it's important to really, hear these stories and see how other small businesses are adjusting to the times, and let that, make us feel like we're not in this alone, and there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. We can move to the next slide. Alrighty, we can go to the next slide, please. So, moving forward from how to bring your business online to how to best use these channels to your benefit, it's necessary for you to know that not all platforms are used the same way, just like we were just discussing, right? Your content must reflect that. When you're starting to work on your content strategy, whether you want your consumer to participate and create engaging content, whether you want your consumer to purchase and create more promo focused content, whether you want your consumer to engage and make it a bit more entertaining and groundbreaking, or to learn and make it a bit more educational, right? You need to execute differently across channels so that your consumer gets what they want through the channel that they prefer. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right. So brands should execute differently across channels. And when I look at this, the simplest way for me to explain it is, for example, when you're working on your website, right? And I don't know if this has happened to any of you, it has to me. If I'm on Instagram and I'm following a brand and they have the link to their business website on the bio, sometimes I've clicked on that link because I'm interested in their product and I want to look what's online. And when I click on the link, their website isn't really popping up on my mobile. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's not mobile friendly. So then I go on my iPad and I try to go on the link. Same thing. Not really working on my iPad. But then I go on my laptop and I finally can look at the website. And this is just an example that I really like to bring up because it's important to keep that in mind. It's important to think about your consumer journey, um, and the user experience that you want them to have when looking at your content. So whether it's because of how you build your website so that it's accessible through all of these channels, or whether you're working on a specific campaign, it's really, really important for you to keep this in mind so that the user experience is always spectacular. Let's move to the next slide, please. All right. So this is my favorite part, the difference between organic and paid social. So this is a very common question that I've gotten from many clients, from friends that are starting to build their own businesses, from influencer friends that want to understand, is it worth me putting money behind my content? The answer is yes. So the great thing about using these channels, all of these social media channels for your specific business needs, is that you don't only have your organic following to reach, you have an entire world of targeted audiences that you can reach if you put money behind your content, right? So, for example, when you look at organic social media lives in your feed. That's your evergreen content. That's a content that your followers get to see every second that you post. But when you look at paid social media, that lives in the feed of targeted audiences. So when you put money behind these sponsored posts or digital advertisements, you're increasing the opportunity for you to reach more people and for you to reach specific groups of people that make sense for your business, specific groups of people that you personally want to target as a business because it makes sense for the product that you're trying to sell. And that's the beauty about the difference between organic social media and paid social media. Can we go to the next slide, please? So yes, so basically you need to pay a little bit to play, right? The more people there is online, the harder it is to stand out. So it's always helpful to consider putting some money behind your content to expand your reach and that visibility that you want to start seeing some return in investment. We can go to the next slide. All right. So this is the fun part of this workshop. This is my favorite part of this workshop. Our creative, crazy, inspirational portion of our workshop. Let's go to the next slide, please. So when we think about creative, there's so many avenues that you can take as a brand, right? But one of the most important steps that you need to take when you start to build your content strategy is to define your voice, define your unique look and feel, and the persona that you want to build in the social space. So, for example, when we think about a brand that does it well, we look at Corona. Corona is very cohesive with how they produce their content. There are brands where when you go on their feed, you immediately know that it's a Corona feed. And when you go on their Facebook or Twitter, it's the same kind of content. You know, it stays true to their adventurous brand voice. They stick to the same look and feel, the same color palette. So it's good to look at what other brands are doing in terms of their creative approach. And for Corona in particular, they are very strategic with how they have defined their unique voice in a very creative way. Let's go to the next slide. So being authentic is also so important for you to consider once you start building your brand's presence, right, in the social space. When we look at being authentic, we look at what Tata Harper, a Colombian-owned brand, has done. It stays true to its values, but it also gets their consumers to stop and pay attention to their message. Why? Because their product is about cruelty-free, non-toxic skincare, but at the same time, they're sharing content about the environment, how to keep the environment safe, and what they're doing to help the environment. So it encompasses their values as a brand. So it remains true to their authenticity. Let's go to the next slide, please. Looking outside your brand for inspiration. So this is also important for you to keep in mind as you start to work on your content strategy and looking for different ways on how to create groundbreaking content. Look at what other brands are doing. When we look at Tahin, for example, a favorite of mine, they celebrate our culture through their content. So they're sharing, their product, but they're also sharing beautiful recipes of how to use their product, by celebrating our culture at the same time. So it's a beautiful combination of, staying true to your product, wanting to sell your product, but bringing your brand to life and celebrating your culture as you do that. Let's go to the next slide, please. Being unexpected, and this might be controversial, but you can be unexpected, with how you create your content and the formats that you're using, and creating thumb stomping, content where people are going to be like, wow, that was a beautiful piece. Or you can also be unexpected with the messages that you share. In this case in particular, we see how, Tequila Patron took a stance on the Black Lives Matter movement. And it was definitely unexpected for a follower that's used to seeing this beautiful, bright, content about, drinks and recipes of cocktails. And then all of a sudden see a black box that talks about this very, difficult time that we're going through, right? And what they're doing as a brand, to support the movement internally. Let's go to the next slide. Delivering a unique experience. So you also want to mold your brand according to the times. For example, Café Bustelo, during, the pandemic, they decided to do, pop-up shops that would make their product be a bit more human, right? They created a human experience where people would be able to connect to their product on a more personal level. And it helps with brand awareness and positive brand perception. And it even helped, Café Bustelo have a beautiful bank of user generated content, because the consumers were so excited about this unique experience that they started sharing it online. Let's go to the next slide, please. Being consistent and clear. Now, this is something that Pollo Tropical and Modelo have done beautifully. It's okay if you want your feed to be all about selling your product. For example, when you see at Pollo Tropical's feed, it's all about their offers and their product, right? It's not so much of a creative feed, but more so of a promo feed. When you look at Modelo, they're all about promoting their influencer partnerships, and their products as well, right? A lot of sales focused content. So it's important to keep this in mind, as long as it builds consistency across the feed and it sends a clear message to your consumer. Let's go to the next slide, please. And, most importantly, creating a two-way dialogue. And this is all about community management and the importance of having those one-on-one conversations with your audience, whether it's positioning your brand as a leader, or whether it's through customer service, or just engaging through their positive comments. It's really important for you to create a two-way dialogue with your followers, so that you start building a long-term relationship with your consumer. We can go to the next slide, but that next slide we can skip. And last but not least, results. And I'm going a little bit over time, so I'm going to run through this very quickly. Let's go to the next slide, please. So results is really just about tracking meaningful metrics. Your social media goals should align with your overall marketing objectives. So it's so important for you to measure your success by understanding your results and the impact of your work. So please just look at your business objective, right? And really understand what your social media goal is, by that business objective, and then look at the metrics that make sense for your content. Keep it simple from the beginning. Just keep it from a very high level. Look at awareness, look at engagement, look at conversions. And then once you start establishing that presence online, you can go a little bit deeper into those results. But at least, don't be too hard on yourself. Keep it very simple from the beginning. The objective simple, the goals simple and attainable, so that you're also setting realistic goals for your business. We can go to the next slide. And like I mentioned at the beginning, these are the most important takeaways that we want you to take with you this afternoon. We talked about building your brand story and defining your voice, thinking beyond your product from the inside out, capturing your audience's attentions, reaching your audience, the importance of putting a little bit of money behind your content to expand that visibility, identifying your social sweet spot, understand your audience on a more personal level, measuring the impact of your work and the success of your work, defining KPIs that are realistic to the business that you're building, and thinking about the long term relationships that you want to build with your consumer. And we can go into the questions. We have a little bit of time. All right. So, how do I determine what is the best social media platform for my business? So, when you start thinking about what social media platform to use for your business, um, first of all, you should be leveraging everything that you can to grow your business, right? We know this. And these may include more platforms than what you feel comfortable with. But it's okay to take it easy. Like we mentioned, when moving your business online, it's important to build your website, to have your Google business profile so you can track your success. And my personal suggestion is to at least have a Facebook page and an Instagram page from the get-go. You don't need to commit to many channels from the beginning. Try to commit to those two very important ones for you and for your business, and become an expert at using those platforms, right? So the more that you focus your attention on those first two platforms, the better you're going to be at understanding how to use it. You're going to feel a bit more comfortable with the postings and scheduling content and really looking at the analytics and the insights. And really understanding your audience, see how your audience behaves. So when choosing the right channel for your business, think about your objectives and your audience, and from that perspective, you're going to be able to get a bit more familiarized with the space. And once you do that, you'll be ready to start bringing more channels to the table. Any other questions? No other questions. All right. Well, that's all the time we have left today. Thank you all for being here with us. It's our hope that you walked away with some good tips and tricks on how to help you grow and digitalize your business. Fue un placer estar con todos ustedes hoy. Fue un honor, de verdad. Espero que les haya gustado, espero que lo hayan disfrutado y que hayan aprendido un poquito de todo, pues, toda esta cantidad de información que compartimos con ustedes. Estaré a la orden siempre para lo que necesiten. Thank you so much.